Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Strong Men Podcast, Empowering Men to Thrive. I'm Anthony Treyas from strongmencoaching.com, where I share how men can thrive in their health, wealth, their sense of adventure, and mental toughness. In February 2018, I conducted a men's health online summit. The interview I received the most feedback from is from an interview I conducted with life coach, author, and speaker Levine. The unique and powerful message Wanye provided in this interview is truly a message I believe all men will benefit from. Now, get ready for this powerful message that can change your life.
And so I'm really excited for my next guest, Levine, who's been doing this for over a few decades now, and he brings a really unique perspective in the things that he's experienced and the men that he's helped really thrive in their life. And that's what the New Man Health Summit is all about, empowering men to thrive. So I'm going to welcome my guest, Wayne. How are you, sir?
Good, Anthony. Good to be here.
Great. First off, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here and be part of the New Man Health Summit. I know you've been doing this work for over a few decades now and have seen a vast array of changes in men, and I know it's also been your own unique perspective that has changed as well. So I just thank you for being willing to participate in this and to be here with me here today and to share with men who have a desire to change and improve their life.
Absolutely. First, I just want to send out a caveat. I'm coming from Thailand.
Yes.
And internet is, you never know. And then fishing boats go by and things get loud. So bear with me, but I think we'll be able to talk about some good, important stuff.
Excellent. Yes, thank you for that, Wayne. And yes, Wayne is in Thailand, traveling the world, but still living his purpose and his mission and helping men. Wayne, will you take a brief moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Wayne Levine. I actually go by Wanye these days. That was a nickname I received at Burning Man. And it stuck, but it stuck for me because it represents the changes that I've gone through and the new person, the new man that I've been wanting to be and that I've been working towards. And Wayne is like, it's in the past. It was my name. It was who I was. And so anyway, you can call me whatever you like, but I'm going by Wanye because it just feels better these days. So,
okay.
I began Better Men Coaching a long time ago in Southern California, and I've been involved in men's work since the early 90s. And, when I got involved, I was in my early 30s and lacking any kind of masculine energy in my life, in my body, and in terms of support. My father died when I was 9. I was brought up by a single mom, and, all that goes with that. And through the course of the work I did with the men back in those days, and then leading men and creating programs and doing a weekend and all that kind of stuff, it has allowed me over the course of time to find out who I am authentically. And it's taken a lot of time. It really has. And I think one of the main things I've learned now is to teach the patience that's required to make fundamental changes, because despite a lot of the hype that you'll see in terms of getting rich quick and losing weight quick and transforming yourself quickly, all that kind of stuff, it's all such nonsense. It's really a commitment that we have to make. And for me, it's a lifelong commitment to grow and change and to figure out who I am and to roll with things as they evolve. And so that's sort of the focus of the work that I do with men.
Wayne, you brought up a unique point in that it's a consistent thing. I think for people who have lived, I'm 41 and I know that I'm completely a different man than I was in my 20s and in my 30s. And so
you look good for 41, Anthony. You look good, dude.
Well, thank you. But to know that how my life has changed and how I've had to really work at it. And it's not something that comes easy. And it's, as you mentioned, it's an ever evolving thing. And I think that's really what's unique about this is that once there's these bits and pieces throughout my life where I've had these enlightenment moments, I guess, if you will. and it's just how allowed me to continue to grow and to be where I'm at today. So definitely can appreciate your wisdom from your age and how you continue to evolve in your life and
my
even
age,
yeah.
yes, my old age. So I'll be 57
Yeah.
in a month or so.
Yes.
And it is, but it's true. It is my life experience that is probably the most important element that I bring to the work. I've read all the books. I have my degrees in psychology, but my willingness to do my work, my willingness to go through the fire, to feel the pain, my willingness to look like a fool, to risk, is really how I gathered the wisdom from other men, from other people and women, and in so many trainings and healings. It is really that experience, having been married for 32 years, now divorced, having raised a boy and a girl who are now grown adults. These are the things that I think are most helpful in terms of when I share stories with the men, to allow them to start to integrate, well, how will I do this in my own life?
Correct. When you have been coaching for over 2 decades, tell me, how has your practice evolved over these 2 decades?
Yeah, well, it's so interesting because things were so simple. They seem so simple in black and white in my early 30s when I learned that this is what men do, and I had an experience in a men's weekend, and we were given some guidelines, and I took to it like a duck to water because I was so thirsty for it. And I sort of followed the guidelines that were given. But over time, you start to see the nuances, and you start to figure out intuitively what really works for me and what doesn't work for me. And the more comfortable I became in listening to my own inner voice, my own body, that's when I began to change the way I spoke. My language changed. As my kids got older and my experience expanded, I was able to speak with a bit more authority about how to raise children and how to deal with the feelings that come up. And the stories of all the men, the time, the thousands of hours spent with the men in groups each week at our retreats, all of that informed me more and more and more about, well, what are we really doing here? And so where I focused my energy 20 years ago is so different than where I focus now. At the beginning, I was sort of dealing with what problems do you have right now, sort of top level, dealing with the crisis, the issue with your relationship, with your wife, and that sort of thing. And although we still deal with all of the same issues, I focus much at a deeper level in terms of energetically, spiritually, emotionally, where are you coming from? Because when you make the change at a lower level, then it fixes or it helps us to shift everything up here. So I guess I'm a bit of an elder now in this community because I've been at it for such a long time. And we need all men of all ages to be coaching, because somebody who will resonate with me may not be, the same person that would resonate with you, Anthony, or you might want someone even younger to be talking to a teenager. It just depends. It's a very personal sort of journey, and you have to really allow yourself to feel a connection with a healer or a coach of some kind.
Yeah, that's really unique, and I appreciate you bringing that up as far as age and how I know in a previous interview I had where we talk about how there was a 70-year-old man who was mentoring, a former Marine who's in his 30s, and how that relationship, that mentorship is vital in that person and in that person's life, in that younger person's life, and can learn from that 70-year-old man, and how that 70-year-old man can feel like he's contributing as well because he has this life experience, this wisdom, because of his life and the many things that we can only imagine, that people eventually do go through by the time you're 70 years old and
right.
Losing.
And at the same time, when we have our groups, I run 4 groups per week via Skype, and there are men from late 20s to 70s. And the wisdom was in all directions. There are things that happen, there are things that are said by the younger guys that are just like, boom. And it's something that the older guys have forgotten. So it really, the teaching does go both ways. And we've seen that in all of our weekend retreats as well.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Wayne, from your perspective, what is it that men really need to feel successful, fulfilled, and at peace?
Yeah. Success is a very interesting word. You know, like, we think that when we say a word or a phrase that we all have the same understanding of what that is. But if you had 10 men in a room and you asked them, tell us your definition of success, it would be different for every man. If you asked every man, tell us your definition of freedom, it would be different for every man. And so what's so important is that you have to, as a coach, first of all, to understand what it means, what success means, what fulfillment means, what peace means to the man sitting in front of you. Because it's not going to be the same for every two men. And so the first thing is to like get clear. And most men are not clear about those definitions. What do they really mean for them? So first you got to get to that point. And in the process of defining those terms, the men start to realize and see what the obstacles are between them and manifesting whatever it is they've imagined. And so the work is really teaching men to get out of the box, out of the matrix, out of this perception of what success is, what anything is, what life is, what the American dream is, and start to think for themselves about what they really want in their lives, not what they inherited, not what was handed down to them from really generations of really a way of living that was more intended to make money for the people manufacturing products than it was really for us individuals to be fully authentic.
Very unique perspective. And as you mentioned, being able to know and understand the person sitting across from you, what their definition of success is and what their definition of freedom is. And it's really important to note that we do have those differences in the way we look at those titles or those subjects. And so it's really unique to hear that in the sense when we do hear of success, most of the time we think of what? We think of money and we think of cars and homes and all these sorts of things, where success for someone could be something completely different from that. And that's totally okay. And that they're pursuing what they feel is successful to them and feel that is a possibility for them. So
yes. And so you mentioned money. Let me just throw out that it's never about the money. And men are so wrapped up in their egos around money. Their identity is so wrapped up with how much money they made this month, what their careers look like. And one of the greatest gifts that I've received by getting divorced, by selling everything I had in the States, by moving overseas, by living on a tighter budget, because most of my money went away in the divorce, which is a whole other topic. I have learned to have a new, healthier relationship with money. We all have a relationship with money. We're not aware of it, but it's our relationship. And most of those relationships are completely unhealthy because we learned it from our fathers. We've come from scarcity. We've bought into some bullshit about what we should own, what we should have, how we should be dressing, what things should look like. And none of that is necessarily you. It's just marketing. It's merchandising. And so such a big part of personal development is being able to separate yourself from all this nonsense that surrounds you, that may have nothing to do with you, that may be making you unhappy, making you sick, making you feel less than. So there's a lot of awakening that has to happen in this process of becoming the man that you want to be.
When you mentioned spirituality has played an important role in your personal journey, when you work with men, how much of a role does spirituality play?
So we talked about earlier in terms of how my practice has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Now I see everything as spiritual.
Okay.
It's all energetic, spiritual. It's all about a divine flow. It's all about authenticity and connecting with it. Now, a lot of guys are put off by that sense because they have early childhood experiences with organized religion. Now, I'm not talking about religion, but my sense of spirituality doesn't conflict with the fundamental precepts of all organized religions. Now, the dogma that is a part of organized religion, I think oftentimes really hinders men and their personal growth. And that's something that we talk about because I work with very religious Christians. I work with Orthodox Jews. It doesn't matter that perspective where you're coming from, but we do have to have a common understanding of the language. So spirituality now for me is hearing the truth, being in the divine feminine flow of life, having a balance in my own body between my masculine and feminine energy. That plays a big role in having a healthy relationship with a woman, which we can talk about in a moment.
Absolutely.
But I think fundamentally it's important, I think, for all of us to have a connection with something greater than ourselves. Because if we think that we are the center of the universe, which is where I've come from, what happens is that you are only relying on your own counsel. And when you start to fall to pieces, which inevitably most men do, because it's too much to do by yourself. When you start to fall to pieces, then you've got nothing to lean on, right? So if you can connect with something greater, and whether it's God, some other spiritual sort of concept, whether it's just simply nature through meditation, whatever that is, to know that, yeah, I'm plugging into something. I feel the collective consciousness. You know, I feel connected to you when I'm in the same room with you. You know, and we start talking about little things that happen to everybody. So they start to get the sense of, oh, I see those coincidences all the time. And we talk about, well, maybe they're not coincidences. Maybe there's this energetic flow, and maybe these are much more than coincidences. So anyway, we talk about all those things so that we can start to have a common understanding of, hey, there's more to this life than we see. And once we open up to it, is when change can really happen.
Wayne, have you seen in over the years, have you seen, because I'm thinking back, 20, 30 years ago, where if you were to mention spirituality in the sense, and how you're referencing, whether it's meditation or yoga or looking to something else, beyond yourself, greater than yourself, there was a conception about what that entailed. And so have you seen this shift and seen people be more accepting and willing to understand this concept?
Right. Well, yeah, we all know that like mindfulness is very popular these days in corporations even. So it's gone mainstream. Meditation is well known. Everybody knows about it. And people are doing things. People are shifting. There's an awakening happening all over the world. And I'm seeing it as I travel. People are waking up. People are becoming more conscious. And things are changing. We have a lot to repair in this world. It's going to take time. But things are shifting. And yes, when, back in the day, people would, look down and make a lot of disparaging comments about people involved in New Age sorts of things. Right. But so people are definitely opening up to it. And it's very interesting because these Orthodox men that I work with at times, it's amazing how much we are speaking the same language.
Yes.
On a spiritual level, one of the reasons I believe, and this is sort of commonly thought, that we have so much strife in the world is because we have all forgotten that we're all one. That's the only reason that we can kill one another, that we can hurt one another, is because we feel so disconnected from each other. And the movement in the world is to connect again, because when we know that, as the saying goes, if everyone is not healthy and happy, then if I'm not healthy and happy, they're not healthy and happy. If they're not, I'm not. We're all connected, and to become sensitive to that, where we start with ourselves and then we go to our spouses and our kids, that same notion, if it went out further and further into our communities, into our country, into the world, then the change just starts to grow exponentially.
Really unique, and I appreciate you bringing that up in the sense, I've heard from colleagues of mine saying, Anthony, why are you promoting other coaches for men when you're a coach and you're exposing all these people to their information, and they're thinking of it from a competition mindset, right? Yeah. And so for me, when I first communicated with you, is I think more of a collaborative, right? There's not, I couldn't take care of every man that is out there who can utilize my help, and the same for yourself and for the other men who I've interviewed. And so when we have this competition mindset, or that we think we're competing against each other, we end up, I think, and I believe that we end up hurting each other, because you end up hurting yourself, and it's not, once we could get past that, we really can be supportive and help each other rather than being a competitive mindset.
Oh, I so agree with you. I mean, this whole competitive mindset is really about scarcity. And so that's a very common concept, scarcity versus abundance. And when you come from abundance, you don't have to protect your territory. And that's a shift that I've made in my life, because every problem that I deal with, every issue, every challenge with the men, I have experienced. I mean, I have had to deal with my own crap to get to this place. And so I know about feeling scarce. I mean, I came from a poor household, had no money, all that stuff. I had a very unhealthy relationship with money. And now that I'm coming from a place of abundance, I don't feel any threat. There are no threats, because there's enough for everyone. When it comes to money, opportunity, experiences, there's enough. And if we focus in on that inward journey and that spiritual journey of knowing that there's enough, then we can be much more giving to our partners, much more giving to our children, our families, to our communities.
Yes. Wayne, you mentioned divorce. You mentioned being married for 32 years.
Did I do that? Did I mention divorce?
Yes.
Wow.
Earlier on. Yes, it can open up a lot of different things. Yes. But the thing is that many men have come to you at this point in their life, or that they're in the prospect of or in the middle of a divorce. Where do you begin helping men through such a challenge and painful process?
Yeah. Well, first we need to get grounded, and we need to know that everything is going to be okay. And one of the most important things that I do early on is to really just be there with the man, hold space for him, and let him know in any number of ways that this is an opportunity. And that it has nothing to do with his future ex. It has nothing to do with money. It has to do with his fears, his concepts of what his life are all about, his perspective on living. Because when that shift happens, I mean, it completely rocks you. And, men are like afraid, especially in places like California, where they are going to be separated from a good deal of their money, if not all of their money. And what does that mean? And who am I? Who am I if I'm not married? Who am I if I don't have all this wealth? Who am I? I mean, I had to go through all of that myself. And I wondered, what are the men going to think and feel when Wayne is getting a divorce? He's supposed to know everything about relationships. This doesn't make sense, right? And so what was wonderful is that when I brought all this to the men, I was afraid that everyone was going to jump ship. I was really uncomfortable. Turns out that it brought us all closer together. I became more transparent, more authentic. And there were so many lessons that I learned, and they were able to see me through the entire process.
Amazing.
I have a lot of little videos on my YouTube channel specifically for guys who are looking at divorce. So if you look me up on YouTube, and there's a link from my website, you can see, I don't know, like I made 30 different videos about all the different things that come up and all the opportunities for growth as a result of getting divorced and embracing that change in your life.
You know, when you wrote a relationship mania for men over 10 years ago, how has your perspective on long-term relationships changed over all these years?
Run. Don't do it. Run for the hills. Save yourself. Yeah. Well, I met my ex-wife when I was 19. I got married when I was 22. I didn't know my ass from a hole in the ground. Now, I didn't know that then. Yes, I mean, I thought I knew everything. Right. I was cocky and all that stuff. I didn't know anything. Yes. We did a lot of great things together, raised 2 great kids, and had a lot of fun. And I had no idea who I was. And as I started to evolve and change, that's when we started drifting because we weren't on the same path. We didn't see things the same way. I have a son who's 27, and the greatest gift that I have is to be able to share all these changes with him before he goes down the same path that I'm going down. And so the wisdom that I share with other men is the same stuff that I'm talking with my son about. You have to know who you are before you get into that long-term committed relationship. You've got to do work. Whatever it looks like, coaching, therapy, traveling the world, reading lots of books, going to trainings, going to seminars, digging in. The more pre-production you do, I used to be in the production business, the more pre-production you do, the better prepared you're going to be for the production, right? Yes. And the less problems you're going to have. And so that's super important. And also what's really changed is my understanding of the masculine and feminine. And what women really need from men, and what men get from women, and the dynamics between men and women that undermine long-term relationships. So when I do couples work, I spend a lot of time with that interplay, because I'll just throw this tip out, what men need to know is that you need to take care of your goddess. She needs to feel like a goddess. She needs to be connected to her divine feminine. And if you don't know what these terms are, you can start reading, you can start working with somebody like me and we'll teach you. But we have a great deal of power to create the space for our women to feel safe and secure and feminine. But most of us don't know how to do that. So we treat our women like men, we undermine their femininity, and then things start to happen. We don't have the sex lives we want. We don't have the intimacy we want. They're very unhappy, and everything starts to fall apart. So this whole concept of masculine and feminine interplay, and seeing and treating your woman like a goddess is invaluable.
Very unique perspective. Can you elaborate a little more on that feminine energy?
Yeah. Well. Okay. We all have masculine and feminine energy in us. Most men are primarily masculine. Most women are primarily feminine. But that's not necessarily true across the board. So you know men who are much more feminine. We know women who are much more in their masculine. But there still needs to be a balance in us between the two. Okay. So if men are, let's say, 80% masculine, 20% feminine, if you're not clear and connected to that feminine energy in you, you cannot appreciate and see the feminine in your woman. Only until you understand about how the feminine energy flows in you, that you're connected to your creativity, right? That you can allow things to move without being so rigid, which is how men really are. You know, we plan, we execute, we deliver. That's great and that's helpful. But if that's all you are, you're one-dimensional. So we have to understand what it means for us, because when I connected to the feminine energy in me, wow, I was able to take the new relationship that I'm in, and like it exploded. Because as soon as I got out of my way, as soon as I cleared out the nonsense in my head, the notions that I had, the insecurity, and moved beyond my ego, I was able to like give her what she needed, and it didn't compromise me at all. And what happens is when she gets everything she needs and she can connect to that divine feminine in herself, then it's like a fountain, right? That just showers over everyone in her presence. So the truth is that when she gets what she needs, you will get everything you need. The problem with men understanding what I just said is that they're so locked into this notion of, oh, you're saying you should just do whatever she says. And it's just such old paradigm. And so, as we said earlier, we alluded to, men can only hear what they can hear. But what I'm saying is so much deeper than what most men know. And in order to have real transformation in your life, you want to get to a place where you're willing to let go of what you think you know to learn something completely new. That's what it took for me. I did a lot of crazy ass things. I mean, I have done so many things. I got such, I just got such ridicule from the men. My ex-wife didn't understand. But I am so grateful for the plant medicine experiences that I've had, for all the unconventional therapies I went through, for all the experiences that I had. I'm so grateful because they all shook me up and allowed me to see that what I thought life was, it was about, how things were, was a complete fabrication. It was just what my parents knew, what my teachers knew, what we've been handed to for years and years. And I'm telling you, the Matrix, like the movie, is not real. And what is real is what you believe and feel and what you're willing to find out for yourself. That was good.
Incredible.
Well, I gotta tell you, that's all come, especially from the last several months of being in Asia. So much work, so much healing, and it feels good to share it. It's really good to share it.
Excellent. Well, when we're on the topic of relationships, and I keep hearing information from men they're really struggling in their relationships right now, and I'm sure you're hearing this as well. And what do you think is really kind of the underlying factor? I've heard technology and the way we're communicating. I've heard, just this shift in this feminine energy, these many different things. What would you say about really the point of why men are so struggling right now in their relationships?
Okay, good. First of all, I wanted to say, we got a comment from one of the guys listening, and he says, Ken was saying, it's not always easy to hear.
Yes.
The things that we're talking about are not always easy to hear. I mean, no shit. It's not easy because we're so in our egos. We've been conditioned to be in our egos. We've been conditioned to isolate, to compete, to have closed hearts and not have open hearts. And so we hear things and we are threatened. Yes. I mean, I know that so well. Everything is threatened to me. Everything. The comparing to other men, he has more money, he's got a bigger car, blah, 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 blah. It's so threatening until you walk away from all that. And that doesn't mean you won't have a car and a house and money. It's just your relationship to it. Okay, so anyway, thanks, Ken. Relationships. What's in the way?
Men are struggling with the most. We got technology. We have.
I think that none of that shit matters.
Okay.
I think that what's in the way is that we are not willing to be honest. We don't know how to be honest. We don't feel safe being completely honest with our partners. Men don't have a place to go, most men, to be with other men where they can share what's going on and help get clear about how they feel so that they can go back to their partners and have a mature conversation about difficult things like what's happening with sex, how they feel about in-laws and what they're doing with the holidays, all the hot topic issues about money, how money's being spent, where the priorities are. Men are afraid. They're afraid of their women because they have issues with their mothers and they're afraid of their mothers. You know, we learned what a relationship looks like by watching our parents or our friends' parents. And so we don't necessarily have a healthy perspective on long-term relationships. But the thing that I have personally learned in the last year is the depths that I was not willing to go to be honest. Even in a relationship where we had begun with this agreement that we are going to have this sacred union. We are going to share everything with each other. Man, there were some things I was not willing to talk about because I was weak. I was insecure. And once I broke through that, oh my gosh, I mean, like the freedom that I feel now in my relationship with my partner is incredible. It's incredible. And I wish it for every man.
Yeah. Well, Wayne, you have shared some incredible information that I think is new, and I think it's not necessarily new, but it's new for a lot of men, and I'm really hoping that they will listen to this video over and over and allow it to be absorbed, because I think you really have touched a lot of different topics and a lot of different points. And I know for myself, it took me a couple exposures to that information for me to start accepting it, start to opening myself to new ideas, to new ways of believing and new thinking, of what's possible in my life. You know a little bit about my history and my story and how that was a shift in my life and how it brought new perspective in my life, and my life has just taken off since then. From these different shifts, and it didn't come right away. It definitely did not come right away. But any last words for our listeners, for the men out there?
Well, to your point that it takes time. Becoming the man you want to be, the husband, father, it's not an overnight process. You know, you've lived 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years doing things a certain way, believing that life is a certain way, believing that the universe works in a certain way. And most of what you believe may not be true. But if you are ready to change, ready to be happier, ready to feel at peace and comfortable in your own skin, if you're tired of the arguing, if you're tired of being miserable, depressed, anxious, then you have nothing to lose but to open up to a new way of thinking and working with someone who can take you there. But you must be patient with yourself. You must love yourself. You must learn what self-love is all about, because until you love yourself, it's very difficult to love those around you.
I think that's a good point, a good place to stop. You've got to love yourself, and how that really impacts your ability to love others when you're not really taking that time for yourself. And I just want to, Wayne, thank you very much. As I mentioned, appreciate you taking the time to be here with me today and to share this information with men. And for those who are watching and listening, I really encourage you to pass this information on to others, and pass this video, and let them know about this. Even people who you may feel might not even be interested in something like this, and give them the opportunity to listen to something that may create a shift in their life, where they can begin to become the father that they want to be, the husband they want to be, and the man that they want to become. And so,
Anthony, can I just say one thing?
Absolutely.
Like what you just said about passing this on. It's so important to take that risk and give this information, my book, whomever, to a man you care about. Because in the men's work, it takes a nudge. Men are very reluctant. They're so resistant. But if you reveal yourself to a man you care about, you may just give them this opening that they've been looking for years to be able to share what's going on with them. So definitely pass on the info.
Excellent.
Do you want to be a strong man? Are you ready to thrive and start living your best years yet? Visit strongmancoaching.com today and get ready to thrive.